Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
When Signs and Displays Direct was launched 15 years ago, it featured a complete line of banners and stands, product displays, and more. Today, the company is known as SDD and is the industry leader in turnkey, no-inventory POP programs. SDD has expanded into branding programs for both corporate and private label, as well as consulting services for retail showroom design and more. Visit sdd-us.com. That's sdd-us.com. All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic. With us tonight, Quinn Sullivan. Quinn, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I tell you what, yeah, we're excited. You've got the new album out, and what I like about your work is you can hear the progression in your playing. Now you have developed into a songwriter. So why don't you tell folks, give folks a little bit of background? Because I know some folks, may go, hey, wait a minute, that was the guy who was on Ellen's show as a kid. So why don't you tell us, give us a little backstory here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at this pretty much my whole life. I started playing guitar when I was 3 years old and started taking lessons around 5. And, I come from a very musical family. My dad plays a little drums and my mom plays not really anything, but she loves music. And, we were always a very musical household, so my parents just had a bunch of music going around in the house all the time. So I was just like hearing things all over the place. And, like I said, when I was around 5, I started to take lessons full time. And, like you mentioned, I got to go on Ellen at 6 and I met Buddy Guy at 8 years old. So all of these things were sort of happening seemed to be happening pretty quickly, as I kind of got more into it. But here we are today, and I'm 22, and I'm coming out with a new album, and this is sort of I consider this to be sort of the next chapter in my musical career. This album I think showcases that everything that I really love about music, and everything that people may know me as, but also there's things on this album that are kind of new territories for me. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Tell me this, Quinn. You started at 3. Have you ever had a chance to meet Steve Lukather, and who started at 6, I believe, and ask him why he was such a slacker in his youth that took twice as long to pick up a guitar?
I've never met Steve, but I'm actually a huge fan of Steve and I admire his work a lot. So I could definitely see some similarities there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the catches when you do start young and you gain notoriety, there's always a lot of pressure. Yeah. Did you feel that as your career progressed, that you're always trying to prove yourself beyond what you were self-driven to do?
I think, I mean, I think there's definitely a bit of pressure, especially because I kind of came on the scene as a blues artist, because I was affiliated so much with Buddy Guy and all of that. But, I never really considered myself to really be a blues artist. I love blues and I love that style of music, but I definitely didn't categorize myself as that. I sort of just categorized myself as a musician, and whatever that means to people, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's soul music, whether it's R&B, some pop here and there, so I'm always trying to kind of get that across to people in some way. And yeah, I mean, it definitely put some pressure on me because, I've kind of been hailed over the years as like being like the new face of the blues or whatever, or like the savior. People have used that word before. So, I'm definitely, there's definitely pressure there where it's like, no, that's not really what I'm going to do or really wanted to do. I kind of just, I'm just a fan of music and, music that moves me, so that's the kind of music that I want to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, what was the first song that you remember really gravitating to when you were first learning how to play the guitar? What was the song that kind of inspired you that you wanted to play?
There's a song. Well, one of the first songs that my guitar teacher Brian Cass, that's his name, and I was a huge Beatles fan, and I still am today. I'm a massive Beatles fan, and he taught me how to play Blackbird by the Beatles. And I remember it took me about 2 weeks to really get it to where I was comfortable playing it and kind of confident. And yeah, I came back like 2 weeks later, and I was playing that, and I played that tune for a good I still play it today sometimes when I play live, but I've been playing that song forever. So that was the first time I think where I was like, wow, like this could be really, really cool. Like I could really get into this.
Yeah. Now what
Yeah.
was like the next one that came along that when you knew that you had a handle on it, where it felt really good?
That's a good question. I mean, he would teach me various different songs, and I have to say too, I also had another teacher named Stan Belmar, and he used to actually we used to like jam. It would be kind of like I would show up. This is probably 6, 7 years old. I would show up to these lessons with him, and we would just kind of jam. And in some ways, people may from an outside point of view go, oh, there's jamming. He's not really learning anything. But I actually was. And he taught me a lot about improvisation and taught me how to really play with other people, which I think is really important as a musician. You want to be able to play well with other people. I think that's a big part of being an artist, and especially live. And so we would jam on like, Cream songs and Beatles songs and Who songs and Santana songs, and just kind of like play these tunes, and I would just solo on them, and we would just play together. So I remember those moments as being very formative moments for me, especially with the guitar.
Yeah. Well, tell me
Yeah.
this, Quinn, did you find non-guitarist musicians who also influenced you, where you would hear something that they would do and you would, take that thing that they would do and try to apply it to the guitar?
Yeah, for sure. I remember listening. Sometimes I'd be in the car, like, and my mom or dad would be driving, and they'd have the radio on, and I'd be in the car, and I'd be hearing, because my mom and dad, they have very great music taste, and I remember like this like Todd Rundgren song, "Hello, It's Me," was on one summer day, and I remember listening to it at like 7 years old or whatever, and we were on my way to like a family's house, and just remember like hearing melodies and just being like kind of mesmerized by that, because I don't know what it was. It made me feel good, and songs like that and various other Beatles songs that would be played, and I loved hearing melody. I'm always a big fan of melody and you know good lyrics and good songs. So I was just hooked on that from the start. So I think that definitely influenced or like definitely like seeped into my playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now tell me this, because of your age, you missed the LP phase on, or I should say on phase one of
Yeah, yeah,
LPs,
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
were you a big music collector?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my parents had a lot of music when I was a kid, so I was just getting absorbed into all of that. Yeah, I mean, as I've gotten older now, I mean, I definitely have a pretty extensive like record collection that I like to collect vinyl, and my dad's kind of given me his vinyl collection that he's collected over the years. He collected when he was a kid, so I've acquired some of that, and then some of my own as well. So yeah, it's just it's one of those things where I'm always trying to find new stuff. If I'm on tour somewhere and I see a cool record store, if you can find them now, I go in and look around, and if I see anything cool, I'll just grab it, because I love music, and I love being exposed to new music. So yeah.
Tell me this, what was the last LP when you were out, on the hunt looking for
Mm.
something new that you found where you're like, "Oh, cool. I've been looking for this."
Ooh, that's a great question. I think it was what was that? I believe it was like an old BB King album that I actually got, and I think I got it I forget the record store name, but I was in Greenwich Village actually. I had a show in New York, and me and a couple of my bandmates went out for the day and found this really cool spot. And yeah, I think it was like an old, I forget the name of the album, but it was something from like the mid '60s that BB put out. And I remember like not ever seeing it before, and I was like, I need that.
Was it one of the old Crown label ones?
Yeah, I think so. It must have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just picked it up and yeah.
Very cool. Now tell me this, what would you consider the crown jewel or crown jewels of your collection?
Ooh, that's a good one. Crown jewels in my collection. I have a bunch of stuff, you know. I don't really have anything like super rare. I mean, everything I have is pretty much, you know, anything anybody can get. I have I have a lot of Beatles stuff. You know, I have mostly every Beatles album, you know, and I have you know, my dad actually, he's a huge Frank Zappa fan, and he really turned me on to Zappa when I was a kid, and you know, always sort of had that music going around. And I actually got to get a lot of his Zappa collection in my collection now. So I have a lot of that stuff, and you know, I just have a bunch of stuff, bunch of Allman Brothers stuff, and you know, I actually a lot of like soul stuff too. I have a great Curtis Mayfield album from like '72, and
Nice.
yeah, just all that stuff. I have an Otis Redding. I think it's the Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, the record that's on, and so yeah, just
Are you a big Stax fan?
oh yeah, huge. And I, you know, I didn't really get into that until I was maybe 19, 20. I had no idea about any of that stuff until I was that age. And I've been on ever since I discovered that, I've been on just a deep dive of all of that stuff, all the Booker T stuff, and you know, the MGs, and oh man, all of that stuff. All the Albert King stuff too. You know, just yeah, I'm a music fan.
Well, if you ever get a chance, if you ever in Memphis, make
Yeah,
sure you go, because the Stax Museum is one of the coolest place you can go through. So
yeah,
much history.
yeah, for sure. No, I love to do that. I love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell you what, yeah, you mentioned about how, the diversity of it. What's in your music collection, an album or two that people would be surprised if they, think of you as a blues guy? What would they be surprised that you've got in your collection?
Um, Good question. I'm a huge fan of modern music as well. I love to get into different kinds of stuff. And I have a couple of like, you know, actually, I think I have it. It's a D'Angelo album called Voodoo that came out in like 2000. And you know, I'm a huge fan of D'Angelo, and I'm a huge fan of like neo soul. So I guess people would probably maybe be surprised if they didn't know about like my diverse musical, you know, influence. I mean, they probably would be surprised about that. I also have like some hip hop stuff from an artist called J. Cole, and a pop guy, Post Malone. I've got one of his albums. So yeah, I mean, I try to keep it all over the place. You know, yeah, obviously the basis of my collection is definitely like classic rock, but I do have a few little gems here and there of newer stuff. So yeah.
Well, tell me this, in the when you're listening to your collection. Yeah. Let me digress for a moment. Are you someone who keeps a lot of music on your phone to play in the car?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do. I do have Spotify, and I do have a lot of playlists that I've made over the years, and I've got them on my phone. But you know, I think there's something about listening to an album that you can't beat that feeling of putting the record on, and you know, putting the needle on, and playing the album on speakers. And I don't know, I haven't been able to you know, have that same experience in any other way. I think that's the only way you can really have that, you know. And I've actually introduced a lot of my friends to that style of listening because, you know, I have a lot of people or a lot of friends that may not, you know, that may not be the first thing that they do. You know, they may not go get a vinyl player and go grab a vinyl and put it on. So you know, it's a nice thing to like introduce to people or reintroduce to people because it's been around forever. You know, but I kind of see a resurgence of vinyl coming back in some way. You know, I see it coming in different ways, you know, but I'm glad to see that it's almost becoming like almost like a collector's item in some ways, you know.
Right. Well, music is emotional. It's an emotional experience, and there's something about, going into a record store, seeing all the albums, seeing all the artwork. Then, like you say, when you take the album out and you put it on the turntable, you've got to delicately get the arm on there so you don't scratch it, but there's a
Yeah.
warmth to vinyl that you don't get, with other
Hmm.
forms, and don't
Absolutely.
get me wrong, you know, with digital, I love not hearing snap, crackle, and pop, as the songs play,
Right,
uh,
right, right,
and,
right.
and, a,
Yeah,
and a lot of times there's stuff that's buried in the mix that you don't hear all the time, on
yeah.
vinyl, unless you've got a really high-end turntable, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, so in that, that respect, but we've talked about this a lot on this show, you know, the I like the fact that with streaming, people can have easy access to your work.
Hmm.
The downside
Yeah.
is you don't have that emotional response. You don't have, the jacket that the album came in with all the lyrics and all the liner
Hmm.
notes and the list of who played on it. So you miss out on that whole emotional experience of it.
I agree. You know, it's funny because you know, my parents always talk about that, you know, and you know, people that are a lot older than me do too. You know, because like I think I was one night I was just hanging out with my family and I was just asking, I was like, what was it like to live in the 70s and be exposed to music coming out? Or how did you get music? You know, like how did you find out that Aerosmith was putting out an album, you know? And they would say, you know, they would just hear it on the radio. You know, they'd be driving around the radio jockey would say, you know, Aerosmith's album's coming out on Friday, April 29th, you know, and you would get it when it came out. You know, there was no pre-release singles and all of that stuff. It would just come out and you'd get it and you go to the record store and listen to it. And I would love to, if there was a way to go back in time, I would love to just be in that moment for just a day and just feel how that felt, because I'm sure it was just amazing, you know. And I think nowadays with music, it's everything is so instant, and if you don't grab people in 30 seconds, you know, you don't even have a chance to have a so-called hit or whatever. So nowadays it's just it seems to have completely changed. And you know, I'm not even from that time period, and I kind of in some ways understand what it must have been like for people. And now I understand why older people now may say, you know, oh man, the new age stuff, man, the new music, the way it's coming out, it's so different, you know. But you know, there's something to be said for adjusting to the times, you know. But I just think, like you were saying, like that emotional connection does not really happen on Spotify. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's sort of, you know, you know, it does, you're excited about a new artist putting out a song or whatever, and you click on it and listen to it, and it's great. But yeah, no, there's something to be said for just having that, and also just having the physical copy in your hand too, you know, because you can't actually hold a digital copy of anything. So to have that vinyl and look at, I mean, I was always a fan of like looking at the liner notes to see who played on what. I mean, I'm a geek when it comes to that stuff. So I would just like look at the albums and see, oh, you know, Steve Gadd's playing drums on this track, or you know, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I would just be obsessed with that sort of thing. So
I
but
I
yeah,
I
like
I I know what you're saying completely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, like you mentioned record stores, like finding out how new music, was coming out. I remember going into the record store and they would have, like a whiteboard up, and they would have all the upcoming releases listed. And
Yeah.
every time you would go in, it would be updated. And it would be the excitement of, what's coming out, because you had no other way of knowing, because all, trade publications and stuff, magazines, you're on a several month delay,
Yeah.
with it. So that was how you knew, oh, hey, next month, Steve Winwood's got a new album coming out, or whatever the case might be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely must have been insane back then. And you know, I think it was more like I was saying, it was more personal. You know, you had that personal connection to the artist, and there was in my opinion, probably more excitement that there is now, because there's just it's just like I said, there's so much stuff that is coming out every day, and you're always looking for everybody's always looking for like the next thing. So yeah, it's totally changed, but I've sort of adjusted to it now, and it's kind of the way it is. And so I'm just kind of going with it,
That's all you could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, as we're talking about, new albums coming out, yours just came out. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with this one, with Wide Awake, you have developed your songwriting skills, and that's really at the forefront of this album. So, as you were
Yeah.
doing it, who were your big influences? And as a songwriter, where do you find your inspiration?
Great questions. I was listening to a lot of different kinds of music when I was making this album, and I have to say, the producer of the album, Oliver Lieber, he was exposing me to a lot of really good music. People may say that this has sort of a funky R&B soul kind of flavor to a lot of the songs, and I attribute a lot of that to Oliver's taste, because he was showing me all of this music. He was showing me like some Sly and the Family Stone albums, and he was showing me like a lot of Prince stuff that I'd never really heard before, and Lenny Kravitz and Otis Redding. Just all of these different cool artists that I really hadn't listened to much actually growing up. I wasn't really exposed to that stuff. So it was kind of new territory for me to be listening to this stuff. And I guess over the course of when we were writing the album, I think it just sort of seeped in to the inspiration behind some of the songs, and also on the other hand, I was listening to a lot of singer-songwriter type people like John Mayer and Ed Sheeran, and like guitar players that are really great songwriters. Like Neil Young was another one that I was listening to a lot, and of course the Beatles, because that I think will always be an inspiration to everything that I make, is the Beatles. And so yeah, I was listening to a lot of that stuff, and singer-wise, I was listening to Otis Redding a lot. You can kind of hear a bit of influence on a song on the record called How Many Tears. That's sort of Otis inspired, lyrically, emotionally,
You can hear it.
Yeah, it definitely has that sort of mid 60s soul thing. And so yeah, we were making the album, and all of that stuff was in there, so it wasn't really something that I was like, this song has to sound like this song has to sound like that. I think it was just a natural thing that happened along with making the album. It just was coming in to the music. And we had a lot of great players on this album. I have to mention Abe Laboriel Jr. is playing drums on a few songs, and obviously he's Paul McCartney's drummer. If anybody doesn't know Abe, monster player, sweetheart of a guy, just really, really amazing person. And also Aaron Sterling, who's also a drummer that tours with John Mayer a lot, and he plays on a bunch of great albums, current pop albums now. So I was very, very humbled to have those two in particular guys play on this album, as well as drummers like David Goodstein was on a couple of songs, another great session drummer, and Michael Landau, John Shanks playing guitar, Paul Peterson playing bass, and Dan Rothschild playing bass. So all of these really cool guys were part of this album, and Oliver and I, co-wrote all of the songs together with some help with some other outside writers that he had brought into some of the writing sessions, and we just had such a fun time. We recorded the album in Los Angeles in his backyard studio, and it had such a home vibe to it. I didn't really go to the studio. I didn't go to a studio to do this. It was just all done, written and recorded in one place. And I think it was a nice experience to be able to do that, because I think when you're writing in the same room that you're recording, there's just a natural vibe that just comes out that you can't really get if you're doing things all over the place. I think if you're in one room doing everything, I don't know, I think you contain the magic in the room. So
well, it has a more organic feel.
It does for sure. And I did a lot of overdubbing. It wasn't all cut at the same time. We tracked the band first, and then I actually came back like a month after and overdubbed the guitar and vocals and stuff. So It was kind of piecemealed a bit, but the bones of the album were done all together with the band. So I'm proud of it. You know, I'm so happy that it's finally out and people are able to hear it and listen to it. And you know, I think people may find that a different sound than people are used to hearing from me. But I think it's just an album of growth. I think it's a coming of age album, and I'm super stoked about it and very proud of the whole album in itself. So I'm just excited for people to dig in.
Yeah, well, as you should be. Well, tell you mentioned How Many Tears. You got a brand new video out for that. Tell us about shooting the video.
Yeah, we shot the video in the Bronx actually at this really cool library, and Trevor Banks, who's from Brooklyn, New York, he directed the video, and he had actually the idea. We had a couple of Zoom calls about, you know, sort of the concept of the video, what we wanted it to look like and feel like. And he had the idea of bringing in a interpretive dancer to come and sort of co-star in the video with me. I thought that was a brilliant idea, and so we brought this young woman in. Her name is Matilda Sakamoto, and she is a phenomenal dancer and such a kind human being. And we brought her in to do this video with me, and I thought she absolutely killed it and really brought a different side. I think brought like a different side of the song out, you know. And she really brought the emotion out even more, because the song is already very emotional and a very personal song. And it's actually about my high school self, really talking about love as a high schooler. You know, that's sort of the inspiration behind the song. And yeah, it was just really fun to make, and I thought everyone did a phenomenal job with it. So I'm proud of that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the first video was all around the world. Tell us about that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, that was another fun video. We shot that in Jersey City, and also shot it with Trevor Banks as well. And you know, that was a song that we had picked as the single because of everything that was happening in the world, you know. And it's funny because that song was actually written pre-pandemic, pre uh, Black Lives Matter movement, and all of that, all of the social issues that were popping up in 2020. The song was written before that. So I think once, you know, the events started to unroll and pandemic, excuse me, the pandemic began to come out and people began to realize what was going on, I just felt as though out of all the songs on the album, I thought that was the one that I wanted to people to hear first because of the message. And I will say that the song has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with that. I'm not a political person really. I try not to step into politics much. So I just wanted a song that was for everybody, lyrically for everybody. You know, an all-inclusive song for everybody to just to get into. And so I thought it was a good idea to just put it out first because of that. And you know, I love to see people connecting with the song over the last several months, and I'm happy with the response that it's gotten so far. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, some of the tracks that I find myself gravitating to it. Uh, First one comes to mind is She's So Irresistible. Tell us about that track.
sure, yeah, that's a fun track actually. Yeah, that was a fun one to track. Um, that one started as a groove actually that Oliver actually started in the studio. As I was getting to the studio, I got there kind of early that day. I think it was 10 or 11 a.m. And Oliver was playing this cool. He had this loop going on that he had recorded probably an hour before that I got there, and I got there and he was playing this thing, and it was like a guitar groove thing, and he was really excited about it. He was like, let's rock with this for a while. Let's like groove to this and jam out to it. And so we did, and we ended up writing a song about, you know, this kind of like this mysterious girl, and she's just all over the place and bringing this guy along with her for the ride, and he's just strapped in, ready to go. And that's the vibe of the tune. And we wrote the song with a really talented songwriter named Shelly Piken. And she came in, actually, we already like had the bones of the song written together, and she came in and just put the icing on the cake and finished it. So yeah, and we have a great musicians playing on that song. And this guy Jesse Johnson, who was actually in Prince's band for a long time and was very close to Prince, he plays like synthesizers, and he plays bass. I think he plays bass on that as well. So Jesse Johnson's a badass, and just a remarkable dude. So that's a fun song, and I'm really looking forward to playing that one live. Yeah.
Yeah. How about In a World Without You?
Yeah. Well, In a World Without You is I'd like to say it's probably my favorite song on the album, and I think that's because it to me it just says everything I wanted to say musically. I'd say it's everything. I feel like it's everything I love about music is in that song. And what I mean by that is it has the groove that I love about music, and it has it's got these really cool chord changes that I came up with that I wanted to incorporate into a song. And it was just, yeah, it's just so natural to me. It's just a natural version of myself, and it came together in very quickly. I think it was like after a long day of writing like another song, and I started playing these chords on the guitar, and Oliver and I just kept jamming on these chords for about an hour, and the song kind of wrote itself. It was really became quickly. We quickly realized like this is gonna be a very easy song to write, just because of the chord changes and the way it was flowing so naturally. And so I think through that we ended up coming up with a very cool song, and I'm really happy about it. And yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine on the album.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I like about it is, and you mentioned it, there's a good groove, and it's like, yeah, and you built the
Mm,
songs from there, but
yeah.
you also change up your playing style on the songs. There's a great diversity on
Mm,
that. So when
mm,
you, listen to when you were going into to record each track, do you find yourself, when you get the feeling of where the song's going and everything, how that groove is, do you, find inspiration in a guitar player that, whose
yeah.
sound would kind of fit that? And if so, give me some examples, when you were doing this,
Yeah.
like what track and what player?
Yeah. 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 I think, I think every song I was kind of like, um, I was doing whatever the song was calling for. If it was calling for me to do something specific, then I would do stuff specifically for that song, and that has to do with guitar tones and sounds and all that stuff and approaches to playing it. I try not to think about the approach though too much, because I think you can sort of get lost in overthinking things, and I think the best stuff just comes out when it's just natural and it's just you and you're just feeling it, um and I think that goes for guitar players. Vocals, I feel like the approach of that is a little bit different. It's more calculated in some ways, and you're kind of more sure of like what you're going to do next, versus guitar where you kind of don't really know what's going to happen next. I never know what I'm going to do. I just do it, and whatever comes out comes out. But examples, there's a popular song on the album called "You're the One," and we had this idea, excuse me, of this premeditated idea of doing a harmony guitar solo on that song. And I remember wanting to get sort of like a Dickie Betts kind of thing going for that. And that was an example that was kind of decided before the fact. That was kind of a written solo. But In a World Without You, How Many Tears, She's Gone, Strawberry Rain, all Keep Up. A lot of those songs were just solos that I just did, and kind of out of the gate, and didn't think about too much. It just kind of, I felt it and I just did it. And we obviously did a bunch of takes of solos and stuff, but I didn't really think too much about it. I just did it, and we sort of just picked the best one that we thought was the best. And and funny enough, a lot of the solos were actually like, take two or take three, sometimes even take one, because like I was saying before, sometimes you just get it on the first or second take. Sometimes you just feel it in the room, and you think you may get it better at like take six, and then you listen back and you go, take two was the one. That was the one. So that's how it happens.
Yeah, well, tell you what, you mentioned Strawberry Rain. Tell us the story behind that song.
Yeah, that was funny. That's a song that we actually started way before we finished it, and it was a song that was sort of already started like 6 months before we even started making the album, and we finished it because we went back to it because we were like, man, we need some more songs, and we actually went back on a couple of the demos that we kind of didn't finish, and that one just kind of stuck out. We were like, oh yeah, we remember playing this like groove, and we recorded it but just never finished it or wrote anything on it. And so we opened the track up and we started to write to it, and came up with the song in about an hour or two. And it's sort of the same vibe lyrically as She's So Irresistible. It's just about this girl that this guy is trying to get, and he's trying so hard, and he she's kind of making him a little crazy, and so I wanted that vibe, and it just felt like it needed to have that coolness to it. So yeah, and I actually play bass on that song as well, and honestly by fault, because it was there was just nobody in the room to play bass. So Oliver said, "Hey, go get a bass, play on this song." So yeah, that's kind of the way it happened. But yeah, that's a song that Abe is actually playing drums on, and I think it's probably drum wise, it's probably one of the best songs in the album. Drum wise, it's just so powerful on that. So
Yeah. I'll tell you, you mentioned tone before. The intro to Real Thing is got some really nice tone on it. I love that the guitar part that travels through the song.
yeah, the lick, yeah, me too. Yeah, that was a song that I actually I wrote with a friend of mine. Her name is Rebecca Correa. She's a great singer songwriter from Massachusetts. She lives in Nashville now, but we've been friends forever, and I've written some tunes together, and yeah, I mean, that one we just wrote in my house like 3 years ago, and just saved it, kept it in a folder, and brought it into the studio, and we built a song around it, and really built the all of the things on this, all of the all the instruments on the song, the arrangement. We built it in the studio, and I had that lick forever, and it was one of those songs that just came out of me. It was just that initial lick, and that's how songs kind of happen sometimes. They just sort of just they come out of you at random times. So that's kind of my songwriting process. Really, it's very random. There's really I don't really have a process to my writing. It's just if I'm feeling it, I'm feeling it. And some days, like the other day, I wrote a new song the other day, and it was just because I was feeling it all day, and I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. This is great. And other days you're just completely forget how to do it. So it's very random. Yeah, it comes out at various times. That's why I love co-writing sessions so much, because you pull ideas from each other, and I think you get the strongest material when you're writing, because you get other people's personalities in the music. So
Right. Well, and that's why I refer to it as the art and magic of songwriting.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, you don't know when it's going to come out, and it's almost like a magic trick when it does. You're almost like, wow, it's a big accomplishment of when you finish a song, and that you're proud of. So
Exactly. Well, very cool, Quinn. Well, tell you what, is there anything that we didn't cover, here in our time
uh,
on this episode?
I think we got everything we needed. Yeah,
How about that? All nice
awesome,
and
man.
tidy. Well, tell you what, on that note, we will wrap up this edition of Music Night at the Majestic. Throughout the show, we've had Quinn's website up, so you can go there, and that will link you to all the social media, Spotify, and everything else you can get to. Want to thank everybody for watching. Quinn, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. Yeah,
All right. Well, on that note, everybody, we'll wrap this one up. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.
awesome. Thank you.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.